It's 10:30 p.m. here in Paris, and time to take a look at one of the big stories we've been covering here on France 24. This is apropos. Well, it sets the stage for a historic vote which could oust the embattled president over a botched attempt to impose martial law. The South Korean parliament has begun proceedings to impeach Yoon Suk-yeol, but his own party has vowed to oppose the move, throwing the process into doubt. Well, it comes after the president's short-lived declaration on Tuesday night was swiftly overturned by lawmakers in a night of drama. Eliza Herbert has the latest.
A candlelit vigil in Seoul continued the mass mobilisation against Yoon Suk-yeol. Just hours after the South Korean president declared martial law, he was forced to rescind it, and his political future is on the brink.
Fortunately, we could stop him, but the thing is, still those who tried this crazy move, they are still in their seat, and until they step down, we don't feel we are safe enough.
These demonstrators are not the only ones who want to see him held accountable. South Korea's largest labour union has called for an indefinite general strike until Yoon resigns. And the country's main opposition has tabled a motion to impeach the president over what they called insurrectionary behaviour.
By blocking lawmakers' access to the National Assembly and allowing armed soldiers and police officers to forcibly enter the Parliament building, Yoon has committed the crime of rebellion, undermining the Constitution.
To be successful, at least 200 votes, or 2/3 of South Korea's 300-member National Assembly, have to support the motion. A trial would then be held before South Korea's Constitutional Court. If 6 of the 9-member council vote for it to be sustained, Yoon will be removed from office. It was a rapid backfire for the president. Yoon imposed martial law without warning on Tuesday night, vowing to eliminate, quote, anti-state forces. In a few tense hours, armed officers and army helicopters then surrounded Parliament. The country that was chafed under military dictatorship for decades responded swiftly to the bombshell announcement. Demonstrators took to the streets and opposition leaders accused him of trying to suppress democracy. Defying police, they forced their way back inside the building. 190 lawmakers then passed a unanimous vote to block the martial law.
To discuss, we're joined now by Robert Manning, Distinguished Fellow at the Stimson Center. Robert, thank you so much for being with us on the programme this evening. So the South Korean president's political survival is now at play. What was he trying to achieve, do you think, in declaring martial law and then reversing it just hours later? We're just having some difficulties with the sound there. We will try to go back to Robert if we can to discuss the latest with the situation in South Korea. We'll see if we can cross back to him now. I'm not sure if you're hearing me, Robert. Or we'll take, well, we're waiting to see if we can reconnect with Robert Manning. Let's take a report from Selena Sykes with the latest.
A candlelit vigil in Seoul continued the mass mobilisation against Yoon Suk-yeol. Just hours after the South Korean president declared martial law, he was forced to rescind it, and his political future is on the brink.
Fortunately, we could stop him, but the thing is, still those who tried this crazy move, they are still in their seat, and until they step down, we don't feel we are safe enough.
These demonstrators are not the only ones who want to see him held accountable. South Korea's largest labour union has called for an indefinite general strike until Yoon resigns. And the country's main opposition has tabled a motion to impeach the president over what they called insurrectionary behaviour.
By blocking lawmakers' access to the National Assembly and allowing armed soldiers and police officers to forcibly enter the Parliament building, Yoon has committed the crime of rebellion, undermining the Constitution.
To be successful, at least 200 votes or 2/3 of South Korea's 300-member National Assembly.
Again, to reach out to Robert Manning, Distinguished Fellow at the Stimson Center. Robert, just that first question that I posed to you a couple of minutes ago. The president of South Korea's political survival is at play here. What do you think he was trying to achieve last night?
Well, he's done. The only question is whether he resigns or is impeached. He was very frustrated. His popularity ratings are at all-time lows because the opposition got the overwhelming majority in the parliament in recent elections. He has been stifled on his entire agenda. They've been investigating his wife for financial corruption and threatening to impeach justices. So he was very frustrated and apparently desperate enough to essentially commit political suicide.
And as you say, it's not his first crisis, it's not his first scandal. He will be addressing the nation on Thursday. Do you think he is actually going to go? We've seen a string of resignations already. His defence minister announcing plans to step down, his chief of staff, other senior aides.
Yes, to impeach, they need 8 of the ruling party parliamentarians to defect, and I think it's very likely that his party is going to be so damaged and discredited by his act that many of them may want to disassociate themselves from Yoon. You have to also remember that South Korea has a really vindictive political culture, a culture of revenge. Of the 7 presidents since democracy was installed in 1988, 4 of them ended up in jail, and 1 committed suicide while being investigated. And because Yoon's act was not the usual sort of corruption charges, but a direct self-coup, I think it's very probable that he will end up in jail.
What does all of this say then about the political culture in South Korea? This is reminding some people of the situation the country had back in the 1980s and previous periods of martial law.
Well, that's one of the mistakes he made. This conjures up memories of the Kwangju massacre and will mobilize the opposition. So you have labor parties threatening to go on strike, which I think is going to force the issue. And there are real important implications both for the U.S.-South Korean alliance and for the relationship with North Korea, which has been uncharacteristically quiet during all this.
And what about the view from North Korea? Do we have any idea what Pyongyang is making of all of this?
I think he's enjoying it. It feeds his own narrative of see how democracy doesn't work. Although, in fact, I would argue that the swift overturning of the martial law is a testament to the strength of democratic institutions in South Korea. And that's important to remember. I think also if he steps down, they have to have elections within 60 days. And there's a fair chance that the opposition, which is less hostile to North Korea and more anti-U.S., could win that election. Yoon won by a paper-thin margin of less than 1%. And so with all the turmoil he's created, I think that's going to tilt things to the opposition.
And Robert, might there be any legal ramifications for President Yoon apart from the political consequences? He does enjoy immunity from prosecution while in office mostly, but that doesn't extend to allegations of rebellion or treason, as some of the opposition have accused him of those.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He will, once he either resigns or is impeached, I think there's a strong chance that they will put him on trial for the attempted coup, which violates obviously the Constitution, and also the fact that the Constitution has provisions for martial law, but he violated those provisions by sending troops to the parliament and so on. And it's worth noting that there's a conscription army in South Korea, and many of the troops that were sent to block the parliamentarians did not stop them from going in and voting to end martial law.
And if the president resigns, if he's impeached, what next then for South Korea and for people there? We've seen that they're continuing to protest today, despite the fact that this martial law was lifted by President Yoon.
Yes, I think till he's gone, there will be a lot of disruption and protests and strikes in South Korea. South Korea faces a rough patch ahead because Donald Trump really has a disdain for South Korea, and I think he will try to perhaps put tariffs on them, demand that they spend more in host nation support for 30,000 U.S. troops that are there, even though they just increased their contribution. And I think that will create a lot of tension in the relationship and perhaps put at risk the U.S., South Korean, Japan trilateral network that the Biden administration has built.
That then in turn would have an impact on foreign policy in Seoul itself.
Yes, I think. I think generally, remember, South Korea is the 12th largest economy in the world. It's a major investor in U.S. EV and batteries and autos in general and technology. So I think that will continue regardless of what government is in Seoul. And I think what's more a question is their relationship with North Korea, which has been really in a downward spiral very seriously since the beginning of the year.
Robert, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you so much for joining us. Robert Manning there, Distinguished Fellow at the Stimson Center in Washington.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, that is it from us for now. Do stay with us, though. Up next, it's Eye on Africa.